Hey guys, Jason here with the One Stop How To Guys, bringing you episode 25 of Practical Drupal Development. Now, in this episode, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the theme folder that we installed in the last episode. The reason that I want to do that is because once you get to the theming portion of building a website, you're going to be spending a lot of time within that theme folder. So let's go ahead and pop that open. Head on over to Sites All Themes and then the name of the theme that you downloaded. Now, if you had downloaded the same theme that I did in the last episode, obviously this folder is going to look exactly the same. If you've downloaded a different theme, some of these files will be exactly the same and others will not. We're going to go through this. Some of these files are essential to having a theme. Others are just extras that have kind of been there to help you out. And it's really good if, it's really important actually, if we understand what these files are and how they work so that when we're going to theme our website, we have a good understanding of what we're doing. Now, the first file that I want to open up is this info file here. This is your master file for this theme. If there is a block region within the theme, if there is a style sheet, a JavaScript file, anything like that must be declared within this info file in order to work on your Drupal site. So, for example, you can see here in the regions we have this footer region, and if we head on back over to our site and come into blocks and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that we have our footer region. And now we knew that footer region was there because we've put stuff in it in the last few episodes. But the thing is, if this was not declared, if footer was not declared in this info file here, it would not show up in this part of your Drupal site. Now, you can have it in the HTML code as a region. You can have stuff in it, but the second that you pull that region out of the .info file, it's almost like it doesn't exist anymore. So this is kind of like your master list of everything that's on the site. Now, some of these things are a little bit more advanced and we're not going to really cover what everything does, but you can see here at the top that there's style sheet declarations. If you want to add a style sheet, if there's multiple people working on this website, you can just copy this line for style, paste it below it, and change the name from style.css to whatever you want, and then you'll have another style sheet available to you. Now, you can see here that there is a difference. Anything that is in the same directory as that .info file, so you can see style is here. You don't need to preface it with anything. You can just kind of do style.css, but you can see that this colors.css is in a different folder. It's in a subfolder, so that has to be declared just the same way, with the folder name, then / and the file name. Now here, after that is your JavaScript file declarations, and then all of the different regions that are available, and then there's some features that are also declared, like the ability of the theme to upload a logo, have the site name. Then there's some settings, and that's kind of it all the way down. You get to know the core version, the core engine. This is just a small description. You can change this if you would like to a custom theme built by One Stop. You could change the theme name. Changing the theme names kind of requires this huge process, and we're not going to go through that in this series, but we will in the more advanced series. So if we save this, there is one thing that you have to do anytime that you edit this master list. If you make a change to this master list, you need to go back over to your site and flush all of the cache. Otherwise, those changes will not actually take hold and will not be made available to you. So you got to make sure that if you make a change to the info file that you pop back over here and that you flush the cache. Once you flush the cache, you can kind of come up in here to appearance, and all we did was change the description of the theme, and you can see that that's been changed right there. So that is the master file. Everything that you want to use within your theme has to be declared in that master info file. If you make a change to that master info file, then you have to go back and flush the cache. Then you have things like the template and the theme settings here at the bottom, and those are kind of things that we're not going to mess with, but they kind of hook into Drupal, and they make sure that the information flow stays good between the database and the display and all that kind of stuff. We're not really going to get into those two files because they're just a little too complicated, and for this series we aren't actually even going to be touching them, so we're not going to worry about those. Then you have your style sheet, obviously, where we're going to be doing most of our work for the next few episodes. This logo and this screenshot are the default logo, and this screenshot here that shows up, we'll be changing that later on, but we'll be doing that through Drupal, not through the theme file. And now there's a couple other things that I want to do. If you are going to use any sort of images that are not going to be stagnant throughout the existence of your site. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, if you have images specific to the theme, maybe you have an image that is the background color for your header region, but it's only for this particular theme. So when you decide to update the look and feel of your site later on down the road, that header background is going to go away. Those files, those image files, should go into the image folder of your theme. If you're going to be keeping them static throughout the entire existence of your site, you want to put those into site's default files and right in here. These are the files that will exist for all eternity, as long as your site is in existence. Anytime that you upload a file via the upload button on a Drupal content type, it kind of stores it in here. So these are the static image files. These in your site's all themes, theme name, images folder, these are the images that will only last for the time period that your theme is going to last for. Now, if you download a theme that doesn't have this images folder, by all means, just create it. You don't need to add that folder to the info file or anything like that. You can just add it here manually. Now, the templates folder is a biggie. These are essentially all of the HTML code that develops and makes up your Drupal installation or your Drupal theme. So if we scroll down here, you can see that we have like the header and all of this other stuff, and there's a lot of PHP in here as well. And those are just like hooking into the block regions. And we're not going to be diving too in depth to this, but we are going to be modifying this file particularly quite heavily. And the first thing that we're going to do is you'll see that the business theme comes with this if theme get slideshow, which is hooking into the default slideshow that comes with this theme. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to come down here to this end if just above the messages here, and we're just going to delete all that. And in fact, there's a safer way to do this, and we're going to do it the other way, where we are going to open up page.tpl. And I'll explain the difference between these two here in a second, but you can probably already figure that out. We're going to select all, we're going to copy it, and we're going to come over here and we're going to paste it in there to page front and save. So basically what we just did was we copied everything from page.tpl and pasted it into pagefront.tpl. Now we'll come back over here and we'll refresh this and we'll be good to go there. Now what this is what these TPL files and the templates are different files that explain the HTML markup of particular sections of your site. For example, page front TPL explains all of the HTML specific to the front page of your website. Now, it doesn't talk about the views that you have on that page. It doesn't talk about, the different block regions that you have or the text that you have or anything like that. Those are all PHP calls. Those are what these little things here are, where we're grabbing and we're rendering the tabs. And if you scroll down here a little bit, you'll see that we're rendering the footer second here. So that's what stores these little render statements, are what stores all that content. But this is how all that content gets laid out. And I know this is kind of a weird description, but you got to think of this as the blueprint for your website. And each time you see one of those little render statements, or here where the menu is, you got to think of Drupal as going into the database and pulling that information and placing it there. So instead of working with all of the HTML all at the same time, we have these little PHP statements that inject the rest of the content into those sections. So all we have to do as Drupal developers is modify the theme layout and let Drupal take care of the rest of it. So page front describes specifically the front page, and page describes all of the rest of the pages on the site. Some themes do not come with a page front.tpl.php. However, if you would like one, you can make one. Now, these all just describe different things. Here's one that describes how blocks appear. So if we open this one up, you'll see that, and get it open here, you'll see that this one is significantly shorter and maybe a little easier to understand. So what it does first is it prints out all of the Drupal classes and attributes and things for a block, and then you'll see that underneath it, it prints out the title, any kind of subject, and then it just prints out the block. So here's the content of the block. Now, you can come in here and you can modify things. You can add HTML, remove HTML. So it's very powerful and very versatile. And we are going to be doing quite a bit of this here in a moment. Now, different modules actually have, if you search through some of them, you'll see these .tpl.php files within modules. Now, this templates folder allows us to take a copy of that from the module and paste it in here and modify the HTML within our theme as opposed to within the module. Because if you go into a module, say we came over here and we just went into something web form has one. So if we come into web form, and you'll see under templates, web form has a bunch. Now, if I came in here to our submission page and I made a change here, and let's just say that I moved the submission actions from the top to the bottom, that's fine. That's completely fine. You can do that. However, if you ever update the web form module, it's going to overwrite all of those changes. So essentially, it's just going to undo what you did. So what we would do is we would come in here and we would make a copy of this file, and we would come into sites, all themes, business. Sorry about that. Templates, and then we would paste that in here, and here is where we would do all of the HTML modification. Because if we update the web form module now, we're not going to overwrite those changes that we made. The only way that this would kind of ever get screwed up is if they just completely did away with this PHP file entirely from the module. However, we don't want to do that, so we're just going to delete that out of there. So I know this is a little weird, but we're going to actually dive into this now and see what happens when we make changes. So what we want to do on our site, first and foremost, is we want to have a header background that goes from one edge of this screen to the other. And it's just going to be a white background, but it's going to have like a border or a shadow underneath it, whatever you decide. But as you can see right now, if we inspect the element using Google Chrome, and most web browsers have this inspect element thing, but I prefer Google Chrome's the most, just because it's a little nicer. But now you can see that here's the body tag, and you can see everything that's blue is the body. Now, what we want is our header going from one edge of the body to the other edge of the body. However, it's contained within this wrap. So you can see here that here's our region header. Here's this header bit. And you can just see that it's confined within this wrap that has a width and height, or a width of 1000. We can't get that out of here, but we can within the TPL file. So you can see here that we have body, wrap, header. Now if we come over here to our TPL file for that particular page, we're just going to be focusing here on page-front.tpl.php. So go ahead and open that one up. You can see here that body is actually declared in html.tpl. So body is in here. And essentially what body does is it says, here's the body, here's all the header information, here's the body, and then just print out the page. So that's really all this does. It's just a really small file. So above this you got to think of is body. Then here's wrap and here's header. So what we can do is essentially, if we come from this header to the bottom of this header, and then the two statements after it that actually print out the header region, and if we cut those out of there, we're just going to clean up that space a little bit, and we're going to create a new div with an ID called header wrap. And what we're going to do now is paste all of that in there and save. Now when we come back to our site and refresh it, we'll see that our header kind of doesn't seem to want to be doing anything here. Make sure that Notepad++ saved. Well, I made that change to the inside page. So what you can see here is, if we go inside, that our header explodes out to the sides. And that's exactly what we want. We want this header to be the full width. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually take the header itself and confine it down a little bit. But we want to have this region here, this header wrap region, that always stays the same. It's always going to be the full width of the screen. And then the contents within it is what we want to have kind of be brought down, and we'll look at that in the next episode where we actually start theming up this site a little bit. Right now all I want to do is get the theme laid out, and I know this episode is kind of long and it's me just talking a lot about files and isn't really all that exciting, but it needs to be done because we need to talk about this stuff. So now we're going to come down in here and we're going to do the exact same thing for the footer. However, the footer is already at the bottom of the site, and I've done this enough times that I know what we need to do here. So what we need to do is add two closing div tags here just above this if page footer first and below this clear here. It'll be all the way down at the bottom. So just add two closing div tags and then an opening div tag, and we're going to call it ID footer wrap. And then just below everything, we're going to add one more closing div to close out that footer wrap. And head back over to our site, and you should see that the footer takes off now to the full edge, because we want to do the same thing to the footer as the header. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have this big region up here of color, we're going to have this big region down here of color, and then we're going to have our site right in the middle of it. Now there's one other thing that I want to do, and it's just kind of a personal preference. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. This theme only has one sidebar, and it's on the right. And personally, I don't like sidebars on the right. I'm more of a sidebar on the left kind of guy. So I'm going to move that over to the other side. And you don't have to do this if you like your sidebars on the left. You can leave them on the left. But what you need to do is find this region that says sidebar here. And we're going to copy all of the sidebar stuff here from one PHP if statement to the other, and we're going to cut it out of there, and we are going to move just above main and paste it in right underneath the wrap. I think we might be one too high. Nope. And then we're actually going to do if you did this, we're going to do one thing in the CSS real quick before we end this episode here. Let's pop back over here, open up the style.css file. I'm just going to do a quick Control F for sidebar. And we're going to float, that's the wrong sidebar. There it is. What we're going to do is we're going to flow to the left instead of right. And that should pop us onto the other side here. That's the only thing we're going to do in the CSS. So there we go. Now it's on the right side. But when we go home, you can see that because we have a different TPL file for the front page than we do for the inside pages, that we have a slightly different look here. And that actually can be a very beneficial feature. You can add regions specifically to the home page. You can add layouts specifically to the home page that are different from the inside pages. However, that's not what we want. So we're going to take all of the page.tpl and we're going to paste it into all of the page.frontTPL, save it, refresh, and bam, there's our site. Ready to be laid out and ready to be themed. Now, I do have to apologize that this episode was extremely unexciting. We covered files. Now, that's not really that awesome. But in the next episode, which I think I'm going to put together right after this one, so it should be out right after this one, we're going to actually start theming like the header of the website. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this section by section. We're going to theme the header. We're going to theme the homepage content. We're going to theme the footer. We're going to hit the about sections and the inside pages. So we're going to do this one little piece at a time. This homepage slider probably will have an episode completely dedicated to it, just because it's a little more complicated to do. But that's going to do it for this episode. Guys, thanks for sticking with me as we talked about files today. And HTML. So I appreciate you hanging on for this one. It is going to get a little bit better as we start diving into the CSS in the next episode. So if you like this episode, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and I will see you in the next episode of One Stop How To Guys, Practical Drupal Development.